Well, hey everybody, once again, before we really dive into our discussion this week, I want to make sure you have heard all of the information about Easter weekend and that you know where to go to find it. Everything begins on Good Friday at 6 p.m. with a 30-minute, very simple worship and prayer and communion service. That's going to launch us into 24 hours of prayer. Now, I've received some questions about this, like, if I come to the Good Friday service, does that mean I have to pray for 24 hours? Are we locking the doors on people once they come in? And no, none of that is happening. The 24 hours of prayer is just a time for our church collectively to be praying around the clock. And I would love for you to simply choose 1 hour. If possible, I'm asking you to come to the building where you will receive a prayer guide that will walk you through different ways to pray for each other, our church, and our community. The 24th hour of that prayer time is our first Easter service, which is actually on Saturday at 5 p.m. The Sunday times are 8:30, 10, and 11:30, and all the services are identical and offer the full kids programming. Now, all this info is on the front page of our website, christchurchcamden.com, and there you can sign up for a prayer time. And then I especially want to draw your attention to joining a serve team, especially for Easter weekend. If you're not already on one, would you please consider joining one? And when you sign up to serve for Easter weekend, you're going to get this year's awesome t-shirt. And if you feel like being a superhero and you want to serve all weekend, there are extra perks just for you. So that's all things Easter weekend, and it's coming up in just a few short weeks. Now, I'm excited about the conversation that I think you're going to be having today. We're in Philippians chapter 3, and we're only going to cover about the first 9 verses, and we're kind of ending in the middle of a thought, but we'll continue it next week. But what Paul's talking about here is something he's talked about in other places and even with other churches. That while he presented in chapter 2 a very simple explanation of the gospel, there have always been people who want to come along and tell you that you need to do more. In this case, there's a group of people that we know of as the Judaizers, and they were Christians as far as we know, but they still held on tightly to their Jewish traditions. They tried to convince people that grace and faith were great, but that you had to do all of these other ritualistic and legalistic things that they had done. So what Paul is doing in this section is to say, that's just ridiculous. You all are already the very thing that they are saying you should be. But while he's talking about it, he just goes ahead and lists all of his own credentials or his resume, as if to say, if that's the game that you want to play, I play it better than anyone else. I mean, he grew up in the right family, in the right place. He did all of the right things. Anything that people would look at and say, oh, he's a very religious young man, he had done it and was doing it. And I just hit pause there for a second because maybe that sounds familiar to some of us. Unfortunately, a lot of us who grew up in church have some of that experience. I mean, I am what we would tend to call over-churched. Right? Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, any special event that was taking place, we were there and we were a part of it. And being exposed and involved to all that is not necessarily a problem, unless it starts to take the place of importance as something that we point to and rely on as being favored by God. Others of us have believed somewhere along the line that we need to do a lot of good things and achieve and earn some kind of standing with God. And it becomes all about what we display on the outside rather than what is happening on the inside of our heart. Paul makes a pretty bold statement when he says, all of those things, right, that I used to count on are garbage, or he uses a much stronger word, excrement. They're dung. All of your efforts to get God to like you are essentially a pile of poo. And then he says, when compared to actually really knowing Jesus. And specifically what he says is all of those ways in which we try to achieve a standing with God can be picked up out of your front yard in a plastic bag, when compared to how God actually gives us a right standing with him. And how do we do that? Well, through our faith. He gives us his righteousness. It's a very simple play on words. All you really need to know here is that there are essentially two deals on the table when it comes to the option for us to be in right standing with God. One of those is in the letters D-O. It's all about what you do. And we have this idea that maybe we can earn our way into God's good graces. The other approach are the letters D-O-N-E. It's all about what has been done for you. Specifically, that Jesus became the sacrifice for sins. He satisfied the debt that was owed, and his righteousness gets passed on to or credited to our account, and we are considered righteous before God. So it's really a very basic question that requires some serious consideration, and at the same time, I think you can have a little fun while you discuss this, but here's the question, and I'll just leave you with this. What is it that you are really counting on in order to be in right standing with God?